Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Inka Vat. In August, Indonesia planned to inaugurate its as-yet unfinished new capital. Nusantara lies 1,400 kilometers northeast of Jakarta, which is sinking under the effects of climate change and policies related to overpopulation. It's not the only reason countries around the world are watching Indonesia, which connects the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Southeast Asia's largest country by population of 280 million is also the world's third largest democracy. Outgoing President Joko Widodo, who will step down in October, has focused on bringing an economic transformation to his country that his successor, President-elect Prabowo Subianto, has vowed to carry on. Why are both China and the US pouring billions into the country, and what increasingly makes Indonesia hold the balance of power in Asia? With us to discuss this are Kristy Hsu, Chung-Hua Institution for Economic Research ASEAN Studies Center Director, and Herlin Jen, National Pingdong University of Science and Technology College of Humanities and Social Sciences Professor. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. So let me come to you, Kristy. I understand that you've actually been to Indonesia, or actually just fresh back from Jakarta. Tell me about this $30 billion project to relocate the capital. Critics say it's too expensive and it will take too long to build.
Well, if you look at the amount, it's really a big amount, for relocating a capital. But if you think about all this related infrastructure and also all this plan together with this relocation, I think it makes sense because it will take at least, according to the experts I just interviewed in Jakarta, it will take at least 2 decades to fully relocate all these facilities, all this function from Jakarta to the new capital. Having said that, I would say that we put a lot of attention to the new capital. However, Jakarta will continue to be the center or continue to be the most important places or cities for commercial activities, while Nusantara, the new capital, will be the political or probably the defense center for the country. So these will be two dual centers for this country. And so far, we have not found or have not realized the plans, for example, whether the foreign embassies will also be moving from Jakarta to the new capital. But we do know that there are plenty of projects that have been in plan.
Professor Jen, it is meant to symbolize, I guess, the rising influence of Indonesia geopolitically and economically.
It is. It's actually under this 20 years of advanced view of what Jakarta will be in the futures. And then its goal is to build a green, a global smart city super hub. So it has 3 keywords here: a green one, and then Indonesia being the second largest biodiverse country in the world. I think being green is very important. Secondly, it should be a global hub. So President Widodo also promised that they want to attract the global's most talented people to this new capital. So it's up to the future that how to attract those talented from all over the world to this new capital. And thirdly, it should be the smart city, a smart and sustainable city. So it has to put in a lot of infrastructure that will utilize a lot of advanced technology or AI or other very sustainable infrastructure in the future.
Talking about foreign interest, let's take a look at this table setting out FDI, foreign direct investment, across Asia. In the lead is, of course, Singapore on $159 billion, but coming in second is Indonesia on $21 billion. That's ahead of Vietnam and several other economies. Now, if Taiwan were included in the table, it would come in 6th above Thailand. This is for 2023 on $5.7 billion. So, Kristy, how is Indonesia attracting that level of investment?
I think it's very important to look at Indonesia among this whole Southeast Asian region because in the past few years, especially when we talk about this new development or this relocation of supply chain based on this manufacturing industry relocating from China away to several different Southeast Asian countries. Indonesia is not actually in the center of this relocation because of this manufacturing industry is not that mature or important in Indonesia. But the government has tried to position the country in the new important industry, for example, the electricity vehicle. And therefore, Jokowi, with his ambitious policy started several years ago, so-called this downstream project or downstream policy. It tried to mobilize and try to take the best of its reserve, for example, these minerals, nickels, etc., to attract more investment. So far, we do find results because of this policy and also because of this competition, this global competition for these critical minerals. And having said that, I also want to add that this relocation of the new capital is also another reason for Indonesia to attract more investment from around the world, so that they can put a lot of investment and also a lot of resources to other areas outside Jakarta.
Mm-hmm. And Professor Jen, what does that say in terms of the prospects for Jakarta compared to the rest of the region and in particular Singapore? I mean, could it one day catch up to the levels of investment that Singapore's seeing?
I think Indonesia or Jakarta has a very promising future because first, Indonesia historically has a very strong tie with the European country, given its colonial past, especially with the Netherlands. And also in the Indo-Pacific area, Indonesia has been building stronger and stronger trade relation or other relation with Australia in the region. And then thirdly, Indonesia also has a lot access to these Muslim markets. So the Islam connection also helped Indonesia. Among all the other ASEAN countries, Indonesia can stand up to explore more export or import markets.
Okay. Now, Indonesia holds the world's largest reserves of nickel, accounting for more than half of the world's supply of this raw material, which underpins green technologies, as Kristy mentioned, such as electric vehicles and wind turbines. No country has been as pivotal to Jakarta's transformation into a nickel powerhouse as China, whose investments have supported its establishment. But that investment has also cemented China's grip on Jakarta's flagship industry, which is proving to be a major stumbling block for Jakarta as it attempts to diversify into other markets like the United States. As Washington moves to reduce supply chain dependency on Beijing, these moves threaten to exclude Indonesian nickel in sectors like EVs. However, according to US officials, Indonesia and the United States are currently in discussions over a critical minerals deal. So, Kristy, there was another development in this space. Indonesia effected a shift in the value chain in terms of nickel. How did it do that?
I think most people did not realize that Indonesia is actually putting a lot of thoughts on expanding from its mineral or natural resource-based industry to others, such as semiconductor sector. 2 months ago, Indonesia just sent a delegation coming to Taiwan asking Taiwan's advice for its vision for developing semiconductor supply chain in Indonesia. And also last week, Taiwan, Indonesia, and also U.S. Embassy, they together held a joint workshop in Indonesia to develop that. And the U.S. already promised to give him all the support for Indonesia to develop the semiconductor supply chain. So we do understand that Jokowi and also the new president is going to expand further from just using or take leverage of these natural resources to other manufactured or even high technology. So we do see a lot of opportunity for Indonesia to expand from this natural resources-based industry to others. However, I have to say that it takes time because Indonesia is so far not a manufacturer-based or not an export-oriented economy, and therefore it has to do a lot of work to facilitate that kind of investment, including to enhance its transportation, for example, for all kinds of this shipping linkage and also other things.
So you say is behind Vietnam in those aspects?
Vietnam, however, has demonstrated itself to be the heart of the relocation of the supply chain for everything related to manufacturing, including garment, textile, footwear, as well as ICT, smartphone, and semiconductor. And Indonesia is trying to get that kind of attention by proposing his new policy. However, I think he has to do a lot to catch up with Vietnam.
Okay. And so, Professor Chen, what is it, despite those aspects which Kristy outlined there, what is it that makes Indonesia still a very exciting prospect for all these countries? We talked about Japan, South Korea, US, China.
Yes. In terms of the nickel mine, that will make Indonesia very special because it's based on natural resources that other countries does not have. So in 2022, Indonesia already banned the export of the nickel raw material, and now it's transforming itself from a nickel raw giant into a refining giant. So that is a very critical moment for Indonesia to make sure that those refining plant is in Indonesia, creating more jobs inside Indonesia. However, according to statistics, more than 60% of those nickel refining is held by the Chinese owners, or they are Chinese owned. So that will tie Indonesia with China even closer in terms of those EV production value chain lines. So it will make the United States very difficult to establish a new relationship with Indonesia if China still owns majority of those nickel refinery.
And so how do you see the ways that problem can be overcome? When we talked about the critical minerals deal, that I think both sides, are they equally keen to strike that deal?
Yes, because Indonesia is a natural resources-based economy now, and then it should be aware of the Dutch disease, that over-reliance on the natural resources. So it has to diversify its economy. But so far, the manufacturing of garment or others goods in Indonesia still is operated by small and medium enterprises or even micro enterprises. So it's very difficult to compete with the Chinese market. But like I said before, Indonesia has the advance or some advantage to explore alternative markets such as the Eastern markets. Eastern market not only in the Middle East, but also in Africa. So it has to try very hard to explore alternative market. Maybe it can reach to a point that can compete with China.
Okay. Professor Chen, in 2023, Indonesia was the single largest recipient globally of Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative, with about $7.3 billion in investment. That was followed by Hungary on 4.5 and Peru on $2.9 billion. So it very much is the focus of obviously Chinese investment, and the incoming president, Prabowo, stated that he will maintain a close economic relationship with China. How important do you think China is compared with other powers for Indonesia's development?
I think it's very, very important because Indonesia right now it's at its crossroad to rapidly increase and improve its infrastructure. And the fact that Chinese can help Indonesia to build those infrastructures such as train, railways, and also connecting the countryside with Jakarta, that's a very, very important step for a country to modernize. So for now, Jakarta will still maintain a very close relation with China. However, its relation might evolve to a more cooperation. They cooperate while they might compete in the future.
There has been a recent development which could threaten, perhaps, that relationship, and that's the influx or flood of low-cost Chinese textiles, which has impacted Indonesia's own textile industry. To what extent do you think that, that it does threaten the relationship?
I think Indonesia, compared with its neighbors, for example, Vietnam or Thailand, these two countries actually take a more aggressive or defensive role in terms of countering imports or growing deficit from China. But Indonesia so far has been very mild. I think the country
200% tariffs, though, aren't they?
But textile is not actually the major imports. So Indonesia, in terms of numbers of these measures, are really comparatively small compared with other countries. In terms of all the benefits it can have with closer engagement with China, I think they have to look at other issues. For example, the capital or also the technology from China, as well as just mentioned that China is the largest investor in all this infrastructure in Indonesia. And therefore, because they need all this infrastructure, and China will be the most important single source, they can have all this kind of capital, all this kind of investment. So they have to be very cautious, because trade is not the only thing they have concern. They have to have a more overall view of Indonesian-China relation. So, and also, I think people here may heard a lot of criticism regarding Chinese Belt and Road Initiative in Indonesia. But however, this Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway launched October last year has been very much welcome, because it was one of Jokowi's very important legacy to improve and modernize its infrastructure, and it will be very important. And so far, you have heard that the government has already been discussing further project with China, so that I think they will need China to help the country to update as well as to modernize all this very important infrastructure. And other countries may not be able to do that. Right,
okay. Let's move on to Jokowi's successor. Professor Chen, Prabowo takes office in October. He's the current defense minister and an ex-military man. He's also been accused of human rights abuses and war crimes during his father-in-law's time, Suharto. That regime, especially in Timor-Leste, East Timor. You know, while he campaigned on continuity with Jokowi, how do you expect his presidency would differ?
Well, given the president-elect's background as a defense minister, of course, he is very much aware of the interstate conflict probability in the region. So he immediately has strengthened its tie with Australia, for example. And then the Indonesia and Australia already signed a Lombok agreement back in 2006. So in that, they promised to tackle either traditional and non-traditional partnership in defending these regions. So I think given its the president-elect's the position as a Minister of Defense, he will focus more on those hard power issues, besides the infrastructure and then also the economic issues that we just talked about.
Do you think that he would, you know, what sort of perspective, a military perspective on the South China Sea in terms of China's expansionism would he take?
Well, but at this point, Indonesia is not capable enough to challenge China in terms of those South China Sea issues militarily. So any military action or decision still serve the purpose of boosting its economy. So I think it might still maintain the status quo and then still focusing on continuing Jokowi's policy to improve its infrastructure and improve its domestic economy, while it might extend more invitation to build a more international relation with other countries other than China. For example, with the US, with even Russia, with Europe. So after the president got elected, and then he has been to many different international travel. So we can call it a world traveler. It's very different from the former president.
Right, yes. And Kristy, so analysts are saying that is going to be the very distinct difference is Widodo's focus was very much on domestic or internal issues, whereas Prabowo's will expand to foreign policy. And as Professor just mentioned, he's already visited a string of different countries. What do you make of that, you know, of these multiple international meetings, even before he's in office?
I think Jokowi just set some beautiful or very positive case for bringing the country to the world stage, and therefore the new president must be under great pressure. And just imagine or just remember that Jokowi successfully held the G20 meeting 2 years ago, and he also managed to establish very close relation with Western democracy as well as China. He was also very in good relation with Russia, right? And therefore, he has already set for this country a medium-sized country can do in terms of this international affairs, in terms of enhancing its influence because of its size and also because of its diplomatic networks. So the new president will definitely follow suit what Jokowi has demonstrated in terms of economic policy, in terms of infrastructure. That must be in the center of the new president's policy. And I heard in Jakarta from some Indonesian scholars and experts that they may have a little bit worries or concerns about the new president's diplomacy, you know, because he doesn't have that kind of background. But I don't think that is something that needs to be worried, because Jokowi will continue to shed the light or even continue to provide what he can do to offer the new government what the government can do in terms of building all these important relations with all these major powers.
So you're saying that he will still maintain a role in government?
I heard that he is no more. I mean, after this, after he leaves the position, he will have no official role. But just think about his influence. I don't think he's completely going back to be a retired president. There must be a lot of advisory work or consultative work that domestic politicians, even foreign politicians or large multinational companies will need to have his advice.
Yeah, and I understand that his son will play quite a pivotal role as vice president.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And also do remember that this political party in Indonesia is still very, very important. So right now with all these new political parties, and you can have important people either position in the cabinet or position as a leader or the new leader for certain political parties. So I think Jokowi's influence will definitely be there, because I was there 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, and everybody admired Jokowi. So I don't think he is going to be a totally retired politician without doing anything important for the country.
Okay, and besides, he needs to see the completion of his 20-year project, so I guess he
will make sure that his legacy will be continued.
Okay, Professor Chen, finally, let's turn to Taiwan and relations with Taiwan. Do you think that there's an opportunity with the new president to strengthen these relations between the two, of course, Indonesia's key plank of Taiwan's southbound policy?
I don't think Taiwan's affair will occupy the centerpiece of the Indonesian politics right now, especially Indonesia still need to maintain a very close tie with China economically or in other aspects as well. So Taiwan affair with Indonesia, maybe mostly is in Taiwan, we do have many Indonesian migrant workers here. So that's one issue. And then we do have some students coming from Indonesia. So Taiwan can help Indonesia to train its talents. I think the education and also migrant worker issue are the two most important parts. And then, so those are the soft issues that we can work together. Beyond that, I don't think China beating in this in between Indonesia's relation and with Taiwan will make any breakthroughs.
Okay, so you think that China will basically, that Indonesia will be under pressure from China not to have too warm ties with Taiwan. We're going to have to end it there. Kristy Hsu and Herlin Jen for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.
经历过人生的话，你发现说，我们大部分都是暧昧。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性。
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
In the face of adversity, the power of truth. A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Taiwan Plus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
The White House has announced a $50 billion,
$6.6 billion US dollars
for semiconductor.
TSMC's come out of the 2022 CHIPS Act.
I want competition with China, not conflict.
Taiwan punches above its weight when it comes to creating chips.
The entire world has great interest in keeping Taiwan's chip industry functional.
So the silicon shield that supposedly has been protecting Taiwan, is there a silicon shield?
We take an exclusive look inside one of the 7 chip design firms picked to make India a semiconductor giant.
How many years the TSMC can still maintain its competitive edge?
People here in Japan are calling it the TSMC shock.
Why is Japan so eager to restore its past glory?
What do you see as the next big shift in the semiconductor industry?
Taiwan's take on global headlines. All that matters, Taiwan Plus.